Hello and welcome back to this channel dedicated to popular philosophy. As I introduced myself in the last video, my name is Blake, and we are now beginning to have regular installments of videos dedicated to exploring popular philosophy, or at least making the issues that concern all human beings readily available. So one of the things that we were covering in last week's session, or last week's video, was this whole concept of the Enlightenment. The German word is Aufklärung, has to do with bringing some kind of clarity to one's standards and one's thinking, basically to become systematic, scientific. And the figure that we introduced here was a figure by the name of Immanuel Kant, who embodies par excellence what the Enlightenment was all about. Now, Kant didn't come out of a vacuum. There were many things that were going on in Germany at the time that would influence his ability to become the philosopher of the Enlightenment as we know of him today. Kant had predecessors and contemporaries, figures such as Wolff, who we'll talk about later, Mendelssohn, who we'll also cover, and even a little bit further back, you had figures like Leibniz, who influenced the German context, figures such as Spinoza, and figures such as Descartes. All in all, this whole period is really encapsulating this idea known as modernity. And modernity is important and special with regards to the period of enlightenment because it has to do with relating to the past in a very new and specific way. Even the project of modernity is actually not all that new, especially in relation to the Enlightenment. Figures such as Friedrich Nietzsche, the late 18th century, you would say post Enlightenment figure, and also someone who is more contemporary to us, a guy by the name of Theodor Adorno, would say that the Enlightenment actually began in ancient times. And this is how it begins. We have to go and take a look at some of the preeminent Western philosophers. Take, for instance, the story and the figure of Socrates. We know of all of our accounts of Socrates essentially through Plato. Of course, there are plays that are supposed to be comedic of Socrates in the case of Aristophanes, but that's an aside. So who was this figure Socrates? Well, we're going to begin here because this period out of which we can discuss the project of enlightenment in Germany really encapsulates some of the problems, themes, and the interests that are going to be coming out of this time period. So, Socrates. Socrates was somebody who was not quite satisfied with the explanations that were given to him from the surrounding people, the experts, right? These experts were actually people called sophists, and sophists were paid rhetoricians whose primary purpose was to find ways to win arguments, to put it simply. Now, in this whole enterprise of the sophists trying to win arguments, what occurs to Socrates is that really truth is not at the basis of the arguments. Appearances are what's most important. This already does not add any clarity to the whole enterprise of coming to understand what it is that you know. There's no certainty there. Certainty, of course, is also a strong interest of those in the modern period. So, what occurs to Socrates? Socrates, instead of taking people's accounts at face value and allowing it to filter his own understanding, he engages in what they call a dialectic or dialogue, in which he is able to, through two people, interrogate and come to some kind of greater understanding of what it is that he's experiencing or what it is that we have in terms of our conceptions. In this whole process, what occurs is that most people, or the larger groups, are producing image based understandings of reality. And really, what's primarily at the target of this, although it is included within their, I guess you could say, reformulation, is the problem of mythology. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. Generally, when people think of mythology, they think of it as some kind of narrative that is spun out of nowhere, and its basically primary purpose is to obscure. Well, initially, as Theodore Adorno would say, the purpose of myth is actually to provide clarity and systematicity. And here's how. Myth is supposed to actually show you that nature has an order. This order, of course, will come in the personification of forces and deities, but ultimately it's trying to achieve the same ends that, say, a science would. Now, in the case of someone like Socrates, he specifically aims at trying to have a kind of knowledge which is not contingent, which is not based on anything empirical, but will be based on the intelligible forms of our own thinking. Now, we cannot get into all of this at this point, but this is just another installment of what is to come in this project of enlightenment as we go into the past in order to understand the present. In the following videos, what will occur is we will begin to take a look at some of the primary introductory figures of the Enlightenment and trace that trajectory all the way to our present so that we can have popular philosophy today. I look forward to having you all back soon, and please look forward to weekly videos. See you guys.